Matthew 7:15-20, it says, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. You shall know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree bringeth forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree bringeth forth evil fruit. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire. Wherefore by their fruits ye shall know them." So who is the Bible talking about here? Are we talking about believers in general here, or are we talking about false prophets? What is the context of this passage specifically? The reason I ask that is, again, because work salvationists use this passage to teach that if you don't have good fruit as a Christian, in other words, good works, then you aren't really saved. And they become what we call fruit inspectors. They go around, just like those that Jesus was talking about, don't judge hypocritically, don't condemn, and they go, well, I don't really think you're really living up to par to the way that Jesus wanted you to. So you're probably not saved, Patty. So that's what the work salvationists would say, or Jerry, or Don, or Mary. And so this is what they're going to say, right? They're going around judging people's fruit. But this passage really isn't about believers in any way. It's not talking about salvation here. It's talking about knowing the fruit of false prophets. Jesus said in this passage, "Beware of false prophets. You shall know them by their fruits." So he's not making judgment calls about people's salvation based on their works and how they do as a Christian, because we know there are many false converts, but there are also many Christians that are just simply worldly, and we have to be able to discern the difference. There are Christians that get saved, they simply believe the gospel, they truly believe in their heart, they get born again, and years later or whenever they fall away, and they still believe the gospel, but they go out into the world and they don't really go to church anymore. They don't really pray that much. They don't really read their Bible too much. They're not out doing good works. They're not really out preaching the gospel. But they believe that Jesus is Lord. They know that Jesus shed his blood for them. They know that, that they're saved and they've been born again. Once you've been born again, you can't be unborn. So sometimes it's difficult to distinguish between the false convert and the truly saved based on their works. Thank God that's not the standard by which we're saved. We're saved by his work and his blood. And so people that are going around fruit inspecting are using the wrong criterion. They're judging people's works, which is a works-based message ultimately, rather than understanding what they believe. So as good as it sounds, it's really work salvation. Salvation is the gift of God. It's free. Now, I want every, worldly Christian who's not thinking about God to repent and to come back and to commit their lives to Jesus Christ. But once you're saved, you're saved. It's a free gift. It's the gift of God. And so the Bible even says in 1 Corinthians 3 that there will be Christians, saved believers at the judgment seat of Christ, who will have no works to show for it at all. Because their works will be tried by fire and nothing will remain, but they themselves will be saved, it says, so as yet by fire. You can read this in 1 Corinthians 3, 11 through 15. It's the judgment seat of Christ. I've covered it in other sermons, but all of our works are going to be tried. The believers will go through the judgment seat of Christ, not for salvation, but for a review of what you did in this body, what you did in this life, and you'll be rewarded accordingly. It's a doctrine of eternal rewards. Some of the people there, they'll have wood, hay, and stubble. They wasted their life. They believed. They loved God enough to just believe, and they know they're saved, but they're just, all their works are going to be burnt up, and they themselves will be saved, so as yet by fire. So it's an incentive to us to work and to do good works and to bear fruit. But again, it has nothing to do with our salvation. We have to be able to separate out the doctrine of salvation from the doctrine of discipleship, sanctification, and just being conformed to the image of Christ, which is a lifelong process, versus salvation, which just takes place in an instant. And so, you can tell a false prophet based on both his doctrine and his theology and his fruit. Because the fruit of his words, if his words don't come to pass, then he's not a real prophet. And so that's what Jesus is talking about. And that's in Deuteronomy 18:21 through 22, where it says, "And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, if the thing follow not nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken, but the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously, thou shalt not be afraid of him." That is the fruit that Jesus is talking about, whether the prophet's words come to pass or not, and whether he has godly character or not. Prophet isn't going to be worldly and wicked and doing evil things and then come and speak a word for God. You judge the prophet by his fruit, not the believer. The believer is just simply saved by faith.